Welcome to 3 Count Commentaries. And I got an interesting tweet thread that I see that I think we're going to go through. It is from Snowboy, B spelled B-O-I-I-I, 4 I's. And it says, of all the unfuck-upable megastars that WWE have fucked up due to their horrible incompetence, which is the one that personally pisses you off the most? For me, it's probably Awesome Kong. So this tweet was tweeted out on February the 3rd, 2022. And we're going to go through some of the responses, and I want to see what people are thinking. And I figure, you know what, WWE does botch quite a few careers. I wouldn't put Awesome Kong on that list, but let's go through and see what other people have said, because I think sometimes people do blame WWE for things that are not their fault, but they also WWE does botch shit. You know, sometimes they have things. You handed them something on a silver platter, and they smear shit all over it, and then throw it out the window, and then say, "Oh my goodness, what I don't know what happened. It just didn't connect." All right, but Awesome Kong, I wouldn't put her on the list. She wasn't there that long, for starters. Secondly, I do believe there was a pregnancy thing that occurred where she got pregnant, and then I think she lost the baby, but she never came back. So it's not like, you know, WWE booked her to be a Barbie doll or something like that, and then she went off and went somewhere else and became a big star. It was, she just was not there long enough to make a long-term impact. But they seem to have a plan with her. I remember the vignettes of her breaking Barbies with her hands and stuff like that, where she was going to come in as sort of the first iteration of the anti-diva, because this was definitely before Paige. And she was going to come in and, you know, crush all the little blondes and everything. They was booking her as a monster heel. You know, the plan, of course, was to have her break all of the female toys. I don't know how long that would have lasted and who would have been the person to sort of overthrow her, but it seemed like a really good premise. They just never got a chance to finish it, so I wouldn't say Awesome Kong. Io Shirai. Io Shirai is in NXT, but this is the response. Someone that talented should not need to spend 3.5 years in developmental. I think it's maybe her choice at this point. I think somebody just told her that it's kind of her fault. It's knock for me. I guess he means Shinsuke Nakamura. And then he starts talking about his Shinsuke Nakamura's debut, which would be SmackDown? Yeah, the SmackDown debut. Now, they did kind of botch Nakamura. There's always going to be the language barrier, which is the first thing you want to go to. Also, Nakamura he's in good shape for a Japanese wrestler, but, you know, WWE likes if Shinsuke Nakamura had the body type of Hiroshi Tanahashi, he would be the world champion by now. If he had the body type of of Taiji Ishimori, he would be the world champion right now, because he's already tall, so he's not short. He's got tremendous charisma, but WWE had him wrestling in that Goldust bodysuit for a reason, because he wasn't in great shape. And also you also had the language issue, which I think is probably the two biggest issues with Nakamura. But I actually do like Nakamura, and not really a fan of how they've booked him. He's been champion for a long time. Not just he's currently Intercontinental Champion, he's been that for a long time. But when he was U.S. champion before, he was champion for a long time and never really defended it. And he's had a couple of title runs where he was the champion and just was basically in a closet as a champion, and he would come out every once in a while doing something. And I don't know what that is about him. Why did they choose to do that? Like, why did they choose to put the mid-card belts on Nakamura? Have him be champion for months and months and months, but then he's only defending the title once or twice. I don't know. If he was a special attraction, that would make sense. If he was like a Brock Lesnar, that would make sense. But he's not, and they don't really book him to be that way. He's not booked super strong, and then, you know, we have to build up contenders to face him. That would be perfectly fine. But that's not how they book Nakamura, and it's kind of weird that they would put him in that position. But yes, Nakamura should definitely be a bigger star than he is currently. But his career is not over, so who knows what the hell could happen. I think if you'd have did a similar thing for somebody who's actively on the roster, and you said, oh man, they can't miss with Lashley. Look what they're doing to Lashley. Look what they're doing to Drew McIntyre. He's Dolph Ziggler's butt buddy. Then in 2 or 3 years, you'd have been wrong. But it's been quite a while for Nakamura, and his English ain't getting much better, so I don't see him getting much higher on the card. Samoa Joe. He was everything that Roman wasn't. Could have beaten Brock at a time when they bookmarked Roman for it, But he clearly wasn't ready and could have carried the weight while they waited for him to be ready for it. I'm guessing he's saying they should have gave it to Joe while they was preparing Roman, which is a good argument to make. I love Samoa Joe, big fan of Samoa Joe, especially in TNA. I think he really took it up a notch in WWE. I don't understand why he didn't get it. Samoa Joe is a guy who can talk, he can work, he's got size, he's got some charisma, got tremendous amount of personality. I don't know why it didn't work. I think it was just their obsession with Brock Lesnar. This is one of the official guys that I could say WWE fucked it up with Samoa Joe. And then they had second chance, they fucked it up again. This is 100% on the booking. Samoa Joe was ready. He even got over. He was put in the spots to wrestle Brock and wrestle these guys. It was similar to Braun Strowman, where it was just a matter of, okay, put him over. And they didn't do it. And then it was like, come on, put him over. And they didn't do it. And you're like, come on, put him over. And they didn't do it. It was like, oh, come on. Get the fuck out of here. So Samoa Joe, that's one for the IWC. I will give them that one. This guy says, Sami Zayn and Bayley just depressed me to think about what they could have been. I'm sorry, I don't know what you're talking about. Sami Zayn was always going to be a mid-carder. And Bayley is the least liked of the four horsewomen in terms of how they booked her and how they presented her, even from the beginning. Now, if you mean hugger Bayley, I think that I was one of the people, I wish I was on the internet at the time, I would have said this and people would have been able to go through my archives and say it, but I was saying it when I was on message boards. Bayley is going to die a death the moment she goes to the main roster. And that's exactly what happened. They put Bayley on the main roster with all the hugging and the colors and everybody was like, what the fuck is this? This is horrible. She's super childish. It's super weird. Now, I think Bayley definitely bounced back from that, and she's much better off than she was now. And I think Sami Zayn is the same way. I think their initial pushes flopped because they were NXT friendly. It didn't rely on their personalities. It relied on their work ethic and their work rate. But WWE doesn't give a fuck about work rate. I don't know, like, if you are a wrestling fan and you've been a WWE fan since like 1980 or 1990 something, or even 2000, you should know by now. If you're old enough to use the internet, you know the one irrefutable rule of WWE. Work rate does not fucking matter. Not one bit. They don't give a fuck. The Great Khali got pushed for years. That motherfucker couldn't do anything. All he could do was chop. Chop. That was it. World champion. Chop. That's it. Work rate does not fucking matter. This is the wrestling business. This is show business. You have to be a showman. Now, deep down within Sami Zayn and Bayley, because they were given the time, they were able to find their personalities. When Sami Zayn first started doing his hyper-verbal promo style, everybody hated it. And I remember when he first started doing, people kept like, why is he talking like that? That's so annoying. Why are they making him do that? And folks were saying like that's his real personality. That's how he really is. And he's just doing it on TV now, which is what Vince wants people to do. He wants people to be how they are backstage on TV. And Bayley, became the same way. So I don't think that they could be super mega stars. I think they're upper mid carders, which is almost essentially what they should be. Sami Zayn should at least be in the upper mid card. He's kind of like in the mid card, which is not fun. But he's getting plenty of TV time, so I don't know what to tell you. And he's getting involved with Johnny Knoxville, and I saw him get pulled out of the Johnny Knoxville Jackass trailer. So he might be doing something with these guys for WrestleMania, which would mean 2 straight years of celebrity involvement for Sami Zayn. That's amazing. For a guy who beat up his body for years on the independents, to now be able to get in big, high-profile, celebrity-involved feuds using nothing more than his personality, tremendous. And then he can also turn the work up if you need him to turn the work up. So I don't see a problem with Sami Zayn's position. He's in a good spot. He's not going to be multiple-time world champion, no. But, they obviously value him. And they value Bayley. So that's good. That's better than most. They didn't get cut. Here's another guy. Keith Lee is the truest answer. But my heartfelt answer is the IIconics. Let's talk about both of these. I think Keith Lee, I love Keith Lee. I think Keith Lee is really good. I think he is like Samoa Joe, where he's bigger. He had the promo style. NXT was a bit rough because Keith Lee did do a lot of unnecessary jobs and a lot of stuff like that in NXT. And then it got to a point where I think in 2020, late 2019, 2020, where they woke up and realized Keith Lee is the shit. And then they pushed him really, 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 really heavily. And he won both belts and all that kind of stuff. And then he goes up to the main roster. They gave him a pretty good start with him beating Randy Orton. But they also changed his theme music. They also changed his gear. And, there was a lot of wonkiness. And then he was off TV for a long time. As far as their presentation of Keith Lee, they botched that. But if you can go back and look, and Keith Lee didn't do a lot of jobs. He didn't lose a lot. He just was either A, not used, or B, changed unnecessarily until he was released. But Keith Lee did come to WWE a little bit late. I know that they had been trying to get him, or he had been trying to get signed, according to the documentaries they did with him, since he was in his early mid-20s or something like that. And he didn't actually get in until NXT. So it was their fault that he didn't sign up until he was in his 30s. And by then, he's got the weight issue, the health issue, and all that kind of stuff. And it all just crumbled underneath them. But I will give the IWC that. We got Keith Lee, we got Samoa Joe. Those are two that I definitely agree with them on. The IIconics, on the other hand, I don't know if I can buy that one. What was the IIconics ceiling? I don't know. The women's tag team titles, and they won them. And they were pretty good with them. They did make a mistake in breaking them up, but sometimes you break them up so that you can put them back together later. It's like, unless they were going to be like the Rock and Roll Express of the women's division, I think we saw all we were going to see out of the IIconics in the short time they were together, because they were really exposed pretty well as far as backstage promos and doing a lot of character work. It was like, what was next for them? I don't know. Could they just have continued doing that? I guess. But I don't see the potential of them being super mega stars. I didn't see that at all. So I'm sorry. I can't go there. Here's somebody, Rob Van Dam, the first post WCW purchase guy that got over with the crowd that was cut off at the knees. Okay. Now, early 2000s, Rob Van Dam was super over from the ECW crowd. He was able to get over with the WWE crowd pretty easily, despite the fact that WWE didn't utilize fully the effects of Rob Van Dam. And what I mean by that is, Rob was never that much of a talker, and his character was always a little bit different than a traditional babyface. He was always more of a heelish babyface because he was very cocky, very self-confident. But when they made him sort of a pure babyface, then Rob didn't really, I wouldn't say he didn't connect. That's not the right thing to say. He absolutely had the connection. It was just, he seemed kind of off. He seemed like a high flyer, and he didn't seem like the kind of guy you could put in a feud with a guy like Triple H or a guy like Brock, and he's a physical threat. He seemed like a threat from a different perspective. Like, he's highly charismatic and can really go, but how far can he really go? It's like, I think they did make a mistake, I believe, in not utilizing heel Rob Van Dam. So I think he had tremendous potential as a heel. A lot of people, like, if he wants to say, well, RVD has a lot of the same tools as Shawn Michaels. It's like, yeah, he does. He has about 80 to 90% of the tools that Shawn Michaels has from a physical standpoint. But then you talk about charisma. And then you see, yes, RVD has tremendous physical charisma. But Shawn has the verbal charisma. He's got the verbal ability to joust back and forth with people. Rob never really had that. That was not in his repertoire in ECW. He didn't have bantering promos with guys. He would just go, yeah, you give me good matches. I want to take good matches. I'm going to kick your ass, RVD. And that's kind of it. And you have to ask him to expand beyond that. Like, remember when he had to do the feud with Triple H, and they were doing the first World Heavyweight. I think this was the very first World Heavyweight title feud when they brought back the big gold belt. I think he was the first contender, right? My early days of ruthless aggression is not very good. I can tell you that off the top of my head, not very good. But I'm pretty sure it was, or was it the second? It might have been Bubba Ray Dudley. It might have been the first. But in any event, they tried to position Rob as to make fun of Triple H and all that kind of stuff, and nobody remembers that feud. Nobody thought that was the feud that created Evolution, because it brought Ric Flair and Ric Flair and Triple H together. Nobody really remembers that. It wasn't really memorable. Even Rob losing wasn't really memorable. None of those matches were memorable, him versus Triple H. So it's hard to say. I love Rob Van Dam. I think he's fantastic. I think he definitely could have been a bigger star than he ended up being. I'm not sure they botched it, though. I just think they didn't get all they could have gotten out of it. I think both RVD and Jeff Hardy have the same situation where they're eternal baby faces in terms of WWE. And if you're an eternal baby face, you don't get to the top of the mountain and stay there. It's just you get there, you come down, you get there, you come down. And he only got there once. And then, of course, we know when he actually did break through, he got himself arrested. Somebody said Cesaro and Bianca Belair. Cesaro looks like a Greek statue, is strong, one of the best in the ring, and speaks 5 languages. I like Cesaro. I really do. Cesaro is all of the things that he just said he is, but Cesaro just does not have the charisma. He doesn't have the promo style. He doesn't have the personality. He's very subdued. He's very laid back. He's very cool in a way. And if there was a way to tap into that cool, where he doesn't have to say that much, he can just give glances and looks and stuff like that, then it can work. I think they tried to do that with his feud with Roman Reigns, where he didn't say that much. He didn't do that much. He just kind of figured, but he is a physical threat because he's very strong. I just don't see that Cesaro as being a guy. I see that Cesaro's potential is not being fully utilized. He's better than being a job guy. The fact that Cesaro has never won a singles title since 2012 is an offense. So I think I'm going to go ahead and give the internet that one. I think I'm going to give the internet Cesaro too, because Cesaro should at least be the Intercontinental Champion. Cesaro as an Intercontinental Champion could be fantastic. Perfect Bret Hart, Mr. Perfect, Ricky Steamboat style performer right there. And they're kind of like, yeah, we'll use him to put over Ridge Holland. I ain't got no problem with Ridge Holland. But fuck, can we do something with Cesaro? Now, he used Bianca Belair. He said, Bianca, imagine Lady Mr. Perfect, but with extra sauce and confidence. A great personal story who can inspire a generation of young black youth. Bianca Belair won the Royal Rumble and main event of WrestleMania. She should not be on this list. Somebody said, for me, currently, it's Ricochet. Like, how do you turn him into a dork that no one cares about? Maybe because he's a dork that nobody cares about. Again, Ricochet, this is the first time, really, that anybody has had Ricochet and actually tried to utilize Ricochet. And what I mean by that is, Ricochet is much like Rob Van Dam, where he's a credible physical marvel in terms of all the things that he can actually do. But when you look at WWE and you say WWE do not care about work rate, what is your personality? Ricochet never had to use a personality before because he's always been able to go to Japan and do flips. He's always been able to go to the independents and do flips. When he was on Lucha Underground, he put on a mask and did flips. He didn't need a personality. So now WWE is the first time where most of these guys are hitting that wall and they're like, okay, here's a microphone. Get comfortable with it. And they're like, I don't have anything to say. What does Ricochet mean? Because I bounce around? They're like, no, it's not going to work. That's how you end up in that slotted right there in that low mid card position, because you can't verbally get over the way that, like, physically, if they just wanted to have Ricochet go out there and do all the flips in the world, he'll get over, But is he still going to be a main event threat to Brock Lesnar or Roman Reigns or anybody like that? No. Do I believe, as we sit here currently, that Ricochet could have a great match with Bobby Lashley? Absolutely. Do I believe Ricochet could beat Bobby Lashley? Fuck no. Fuck no. Just look at for starters, look at the size difference. Second, look at the ability to carry themselves. Ricochet doesn't really even carry himself like a star. He carries himself like a low mid-carder. I really want Ricochet to get over. I think maybe on SmackDown he'll get the opportunity because they keep remixing his entrance themes and he's getting longer matches and stuff like that. He's definitely getting more than he got on Raw. But it seems like Ricochet is also a modern Rob Van Dam, where he's got all of the physical moves and people like him when they actually get to watch him do his stuff. But at the same time, WWE does not care about your work rate. They're trying to find big personalities, and Ricochet either he has a big personality, he just can't show it, or he doesn't have a big personality. I don't know. Let's see. I was watching an Aleister Black takeover entrance last week and got real bummed out. So Aleister Black is on the list. I liked Aleister Black. I definitely think that he can cut a promo. He's got a unique look with all the tattoos, and he was going into the face paint and stuff like that. I definitely think they cut the legs from underneath the heel Aleister Black way too soon. So I'm going to give them Aleister Black. So we got Samoa Joe. We got Cesaro, Keith Lee, Aleister Black. I really don't see anything wrong with Aleister Black. Now, he in AEW, he's still not being used to his fullest potential. So I don't. Is Aleister Black a potential megastar? No, but I think he's a potential main event guy. I think he's a potential main event guy for sure. Let's see. This one says Kenta. Nah, is English, small, injuries. Nah, we're not even gonna go into the Kenta thing. That's bullshit. They tried. He didn't even really get over in NXT. That's the thing about the whole Hideo Itami experience, is he was barely over in NXT. And then once Shinsuke Nakamura came in, he became irrelevant because he became a short, injury-prone Japanese guy with not much in the way of personality. And he doesn't even have a personality in New Japan. So it's not WWE, it's Kenta. And guess what? He went over to New Japan and disappeared too. Nobody really cares about him. He's in the United States Championship division or whatever the fuck. He's no threat to anybody. Get him out of here. This guy says, well, we got more. Karrion Kross is the very next one. I do think Kross was a missed opportunity. I'm going to give them that. Kross is big. He can cut promos. He has a great look. They completely and totally botched Kross as far as his presentation is concerned. The straps and the mask, I don't think it was the worst thing in the world. It reminded me a lot of Demolition, and I think that's kind of what they were going for. But I don't think that was him. I think they missed what was him about it. And it begs the question, because we see now that he's kind of remixed his look and remixed his character since he's gone back on the independents. For instance, he grew his hair back out. So he looks like a completely different person now. But you talk about a guy who's big, who looks like he could fight Lashley or fight Roman and be believable in that role. But you also talk about a guy who the crowd completely turned on. Like, I know Don Tony, he loves talking about, remember that one time that Karrion Kross had the crowd chanting "Fall and Pray"? Like, yeah, that was one time out of the whole fucking time he was there. How about that one time Adam Cole cut his legs from underneath him and everybody started booing him and everybody started chanting "boring" and everybody thought he sucked because he fell on the wrong side of the Adam Cole train, which led to the whole NXT 2.0 thing in the first place. We can't just look at one thing like Shinsuke Nakamura's SmackDown debut and say, oh, they had it. Look at that right there, that one thing. It's like, if you poke out one thing, sure. But we're not looking at one thing. We're looking at a lot of different things. Because it usually takes more than one thing to gain a lot of momentum and to become a big star. And I think that Kross was very good. I liked Kross. I didn't necessarily care for his match with Keith Lee. I think he was hurt in that match. I didn't really care for that match with Samoa Joe, but I thought it was because Joe was, coming off of injuries and, wasn't in the best shape. But I just think that he just didn't get over. I really wish they had not done the thing where he lost to Jeff Hardy and they gave him the mask and everything. So I'm going to put Karrion Kross on the list. I'm going to put Karrion Kross on the list. So we got Samoa Joe. We got Aleister Black. We got Keith Lee. We got Karrion Kross. And we got, it was somebody else that I had on the list. But, I'm pretty sure you're keeping score. I'm not. Anyone who saw Paul London ROH contributions knows he's had all the skills to reach the same superstardom levels as his contemporary Styles and Danielson. I'm sorry, Paul London is small. No. And Paul London has not been back to WWE since, I don't know. What year did he leave? 2010 or something like that? So, no. Paul London was tiny. He could never realistically fight Batista or John Cena. Just no. See, this is the thing about the internet. They say crazy stuff. Paul London is on this list. Paul London is not a potential megastar. I'm sorry. Maybe a potential mid-carder, but no. Asuka is on the list. Debuts with a continued undefeated streak. Wins the first Women's Royal Rumble, just to be fair to Charlotte. Asuka is actually far more coveted than I thought she would be. They routinely make Asuka a champion. She's been a lot of her main roster time as a champion. She's not booked as being unbeatable like she was in NXT. But they've utilized Asuka pretty well. I think mostly people focus on the matches that she lost more than anything, because that's the nature of being on the internet, is you focus a lot on the negatives. But Asuka has spent a great deal of her time as champion. She's also one of the major performers during the pandemic where they used her quite a bit. And she was a huge focus for them during the pandemic. So Asuka shouldn't be on this list. Asuka has won the women's championship like 5 times. She won the Royal Rumble. She's been a women's tag team champion with Charlotte and with Kairi Sane. Nah, she was in storylines up until the point where she left. Nah, I wouldn't say that. All right, here's another one. I thought it would be impossible for someone to make a Mox promo bad, but WWE did it. Moxley cut a lot of his own bad promos. I think Dean Ambrose really did get over. He was super over. He left on his own accord. It's not because WWE did something wrong. He left on his own accord. And I think he made the later days of Dean Ambrose the worst it could possibly be, because he didn't want to do it. So you're talking about a guy who, when you talk about the Bane stuff, the mask and everything, when you have a guy who actively doesn't want to do shit, he goes out there and tanks it on purpose. You're not blaming the company. I'm not going to let you blame the company for that, because Moxley did go out there and tank a lot of that shit during his later days because he wanted to get out. So he didn't care. Especially a lot of his promos and stuff like that. He went out there and just kind of did whatever, didn't put any effort in, because he knew, I'm just getting through, counting the days down, and he would say it in his book, and he would say it all the time. He didn't go out there and put in 100% effort. And then when he was in AEW, he didn't put in 100% effort either. He found out in AEW he didn't have to work as hard, which is what WWE was telling him from the beginning. You don't have to work as hard, because he was working hard on house shows and shit. And, he went to AEW and figured out he didn't have to work that hard. He could put in half-ass matches, miss a bunch of knee strikes, and people would still act like he was the baddest motherfucker on the world. He could throw some of the weakest punches of all time, cut some of the most boring, stupid promos ever, and people will still love him. Now he did eventually kick it up a notch when in terms of his promo and his match style. When it comes to AEW, he did wake up eventually, but for like the first year or so, especially when he was the champion, guy was nothing. He was nothing special. Now, what was his potential? I always called him the Bruce Willis of pro wrestling. I definitely think he could have been a star, a bigger star. He was already a big star, so I don't think they missed out on too much. I don't see him being some crossover guy. I think he became WWE champion, so he shouldn't be on this list. If you became WWE champion and you were champion for a little while, focal point of the show, no, you shouldn't be on this list. So as badly as some people might want to put Moxley on here, I'm not going to let them put Moxley on here. Nah. Moxley is going to be rejected. He's borderline, though. I will say he's borderline. because some of the stuff they did do with him, it was stupid, like the little red wagon in the plant. But that's kind of what people liked about him too, is that he could do the little red wagon and do the potted plant and still go out there and have a hell of a physical match with you and not be a physical joke. You know, he was big enough and dangerous enough that he could do the dangerous shit, but he was also kind of stupid and kind of silly too. And that put him in the Mick Foley camp. And I wouldn't say Mick Foley, was wasted. That's always how they saw Dean Ambrose. They kind of saw him as a Terry Funk or a Mick Foley type of performer. And Mick Foley did a ton of gags too, with balloons and clowns and sock puppets and all that kind of shit. The difference was Moxley was just a differently temperamented guy, where he just couldn't do it for a longer term as Foley could. Foley had already beat himself to death and was like, this is great. I can just use a sock puppet to get over. I don't have to take hellacious bumps. Awesome. Where, Ambrose / Moxley is kind of like, I don't want to do this. I want to go do fireball death matches. So he went and did fireball death matches. It's not really WWE's fault. We've been at this for a little while now, about 30 minutes. I actually didn't seem that long to me. I'm gonna keep going and see if we can get to the bottom of this thing before we get to like 45 minutes. Let's see. I see more Keith Lee's. Somebody says Kairi Sane. If we got NXT Kairi on the main roster, she could have been a huge hit. She was immediately put with Asuka's shadow and never given a chance to shine herself. Kairi Sane on the main roster was kind of injury prone, and I think there was always going to be the language barrier. She's also extremely small. And this is another thing when it comes to Io Shirai and Sarai. Let's just throw Sarai in there too. They're very small women. WWE doesn't really feature small women a lot. Like you can be small and physical, which like Asuka is. But Kairi Sane and Io Shirai, they're not small and physical. They're just small and they're kind of high flying. And she's also very thin. No, I'm not going to let them put Kairi Sane on the list. You got the language issue, got the size issue, you got the injury issue. And then she took herself out of the pool. She left on her own. She didn't get fired. She wanted to get married, so she left. And I think they were retiring her anyway because of concussions. So, no, I'm not going to let you put Kairi Sane on the list. I like Kairi Sane, though. I really do. More Keith Lee's. Another Sami Zayn. This is all very nice. Another Awesome Kong. And somebody says EC3 never got a chance when he got called up. I agree. EC3, I think since he left WWE, has been a lot more interesting. But I was never a fan of EC3. I never was. I always said he moves around like he's made of Roblox. Like he moves like a Lego person. Like doop, 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 doop. Like he's so muscular that his arms could barely move. And it was so bad. And I was never a fan of EC3, even in TNA. I won't say that he was a bad promo. He's a good promo. He has personality, but I don't know. He looked like a guy walking around in a straitjacket full of muscle. And I do agree though that he didn't get a chance. There was always some stuff that was a reason why EC3 never made it. So EC3 is borderline. But I'm not going to say EC3 because I don't think that he would have become a megastar anyway. I think he just would have been an upper mid-carder. Let's see. We got another EC3. Rusev. So Rusev and the Rusev Day thing, I do think that had tremendous potential. I think it had main event potential. Rusev Day was really good. I think his matches were there. I think his body type was there. As far as, he's far, more in shape now than he was then. He took his body a lot more seriously now. He seemed to be one of those guys, much like Samoa Joe, much like Keith Lee and Karrion Kross, who was perfectly made for success in WWE. He even didn't mind doing the comedy. He didn't mind doing comedy. He wanted to do comedy, which is strange. Like he left the company and was complaining they didn't let him do comedy and do serious matches at the same time. He wanted to be able to meld the two like a Kurt Angle. Like his mentality is even the same as WWE. Like his conception of how this could work was even similar to what WWE wants, which is they don't want you to take yourself too seriously. They want you to, bring your guard down a little bit, do a little bit more of the entertainment stuff. But when the bell rings, you're an ass kicker. He wanted to do that, and he felt like they were blocking him. So Rusev goes on the list. So we got 6 guys on the list. I can't name them off the top of my head anymore because I'm trying to do multiple things at the same time, and I'm not writing anything down. So Rusev goes on the list along with Keith Lee, Karrion Kross, Aleister Black. I'm naming fewer and fewer of them every time. This one says Akira Tozawa. Get the fuck out of here. I'm not even going to entertain that. Vader. Oh, abso-fucking-lutely. Somebody finally dug in the archives. And instead of saying the same people over and over again, somebody finally found the precious diamond of WWE fucking it up. And it's Vader. Vader is number 1 with a silver bullet. No question. Vader should have been a superstar in WWE. I mean, he's big. His style is physical. He is the monster heel that WWE wants at a time where they probably needed a monster heel. You talk about a guy who should have been in main events of WrestleMania against The Undertaker. That's how you should have used Vader. Instead of losing main events of SummerSlam to Shawn Michaels and losing the main events of In Your House matches to Sid, Vader should have been a killing machine that only a guy like The Undertaker could have slayed. That would have been fantastic. That would have been awesome. The main event of WrestleMania 13 should have been Vader versus Undertaker, with Vader having demolished everybody from Shawn to Brett to Sid to Bulldog to everybody. And the only person he had not beaten was The Undertaker. That would have been fantastic. Instead, we got Vader doing jobs midway through his run. He started out fantastic. They had the right idea. He came in, destroyed Gorilla Monsoon, which is something nobody else had ever done before, so it was so memorable. He was directly put into competition with Yokozuna, which was supposed to be his first WrestleMania match. It was supposed to be Vader and Yokozuna, but Yokozuna couldn't go. So they made it a 6-man tag. It still ended up not being very well. And then it botched almost immediately after that. He wrestled Scott Hall. Scott Hall was on his way out. Scott Hall put him over. And then things went downhill because he became in that Shawn Michaels orbit. And they just went down, 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 down. Yes, Vader deserves to be on this list. Vader is number 1 with a bullet, without a shadow of a doubt. He deserves to be on the list. I'm going to even give that one a heart. The Vader absolutely deserves it. Somebody says, I'm glad Aleister Black and Andrade are thriving in AEW. It's like, are they? Andrade is just hanging out in staircases all the time. Look at me. I'm Andrade. No, Andrade doesn't go on the list. I'm sorry. Language barrier. Yeah, that's one. He could have definitely been a big superstar in the Latin American markets. They definitely could have done more with him than they did, but I don't see how much more they could have done. They put him with a dope female manager. His matches were good, not great. Could I have seen Andrade get in the ring with a Brock or a Roman? I definitely see he could have been in there and been competitive with them. I think that he is what they wanted from Alberto Del Rio. I think that's what he really is. I think while Del Rio came across as a guy playing a character, and even though I did like Del Rio when he was there, I liked Andrade too, but I don't know if Andrade was been the guy I would have said was going to be a megastar or a superstar. I definitely think he could have been bigger than he was, though. So they did drop the ball. But I don't know if I would put Andrade on the list of guys who should have been mega stars, multiple time world champion, main event guys. I don't know if I would have put Andrade on that list, but he certainly is a guy who should still be on the roster contributing. And I'm looking at Angel Garza saying exact same thing. Angel Garza a little bit smaller. But I I don't want to go there with Andrade. I don't think so. I think we're kind of low on that one. I see more Keith Lees, more Kairi Sanes, more another Cesaro, another Shinsuke. Christian is on the list. All right, so should Christian have been better utilized? Somebody said specifically 2005. Christian is undersized. He's a little bit smaller than most, but size didn't really matter at the time because Jericho was a main event guy, and so was Kurt Angle, and so was Shawn Michaels. Christian had tremendous charisma. He could cut promos. He was very good at that. For some reason, WWE just did not like him. They just didn't want him, to be a top guy, so he jumped ship to TNA. So I'm going to put Christian on the list. I think Christian, when he finally separated, he should have been, one of the top antagonists of WWE. The only problem I got with him is that he's a little undersized. He wasn't as big as, some of the guys he was wrestling. He wasn't as tall as Edge. And Edge was considered to be small, even though he was taller than a lot of the people he was wrestling. You think he's taller than John Cena. He was considered to be small, So Christian was basically tiny. And that was the only thing they really had against him was his size. So I'm going to put Christian on the list because in a company where, I know Kurt Angle was an Olympic gold medalist and Shawn Michaels is Shawn Michaels, and Jericho has, charisma up the wazoo. Christian probably doesn't seem like a guy who should have been on their level, but I definitely think he's closer to Chris Jericho than he is to, Batista or anything like that. And I think that if they had done the right things, Christian would have been a perennial main event guy. Maybe he wouldn't have been main event of WrestleMania, winning the Royal Rumble kind of guy, but he definitely would have been a pay-per-view main event level performer. And I definitely think that he should have gotten there. And even when he went to TNA and came back, I still don't think they cashed in on Christian the way that they should have. Even when they made him world champion, I still don't believe they cashed in Christian the way that they wanted to. But he did become a world champion, So he's borderline. I'm gonna put him on the borderline with some of the other guys who were borderline so far, like Andrade. I'm gonna put him on the borderline. Because I can see why you would say Christian. Rob Van Dam is another one. I'm going to put him on the borderline. I'm not going to say he should have been. I'm going to say maybe he could not have been much bigger due to the time of, when he was becoming a big deal. And in 2012, Brock had come back. So I don't know about that one. But I'll put Christian on the borderline. Bobby Roode is on the list. Oh, baby. I'm going to put Bobby Roode came into WWE in his mid-30s. But the guy has everything. He has a great look, great personality. He's got charisma. He can cut promos. If you compare Bobby Roode when he was TNA World Champion, he was one of the best in the business. He is my favorite TNA World Champion. And TNA has had a lot of world champions that I really liked, like Kurt Angle and Sting and Christian and Samoa Joe. But Roode, and it's all because of how it started. The storyline of how they got Roode to the title was fantastic. They took the belt off of him in really stupid fashion. I think he lost it to like Austin Aries. It was real stupid. He should have lost the belt back to James Storm. But it was tremendous. And you kind of want to see that version of Bobby Roode in WWE. And you can see him as being, I hate to put it this way because it's almost like sinking the ship. Almost like you could see him as an updated version of Triple H. That he's Triple H for a new generation. And they just won't do it. Instead they put him in a tag team with Dolph Ziggler. Now, he's probably valued in this tag team. He didn't get released with everybody else. But that there's so much more potential there that they're not using. And it is quite fucked up. And I just for my own personal ego, I want to put him on the list and say, yeah, Bobby Roode is a huge miss because they're not doing anything with him right now. He should at least be the Intercontinental Champion. He at least should be the United States Champion or something. He should at least be carrying around some singles titles. And his presentation with the Glorious was fantastic. So yes, Bobby Roode goes on the list. Bobby Roode goes on the list. CM Punk, oh, come on, get the fuck out of here. Honorable mentions, Big E, Kofi Kingston, Finn Balor, and Bray Wyatt. Bray Wyatt became world champion. Don't put him on the list. And plus, The Fiend ate up a lot of TV time on Monday Night Raw. I think they did drop the ball with him several times, but Wyatt was always able to bounce back. You know, he's a rubber man. And I think he was another one of those guys they saw in the Mick Foley vein where he was never going to be a perennial main event guy, but he was always going to be a guy who was always in the mix. You know, he was always going to be there and be a top guy. And if you need him to cut a promo, he can do it. If you need him to play multiple characters, he could do it. So no, I'm not going to put Bray Wyatt on the list. Bray Wyatt will go in the borderline because he became world champion more than once. People complained, they bitched and moaned, and then WWE fired him, and then all of a sudden he's everybody's favorite wrestler. So no, I'm not even going to buy it. We're going to put him on the borderline. Finn Balor definitely goes on the list. Only problem we got with Finn Balor is he's undersized, and his age issue. He came to WWE a little bit late. He was in his 30s already. He's doing nothing but getting older now. I think he's maybe in his 40s. But he's in great shape. He has some good charisma. He can cut promos. The character was there. They keep finding the character in NXT, and then they bring him up to the main roster and fucking it up. So yeah, Finn Balor goes on the list. Kofi Kingston is an overachiever. He should not even be on this list. Not even considered. Kofi Mania is overachievement. I never would have thought Kofi Kingston would have been WWE champion. So the fact that he even got there is a win for him. He's like the Miz. He's a guy who is overachieving in a major way. Big E, well, his story is not over. You know, Big E did get there. I think they botched it when, upon giving him the belt, they didn't really build it the way that they should have. They didn't really push him the way that they should have. So I can see why people would complain about the way Big E has been presented, but Big E's main event run, I don't think it's over. I don't believe it's over. So let's give it more time. Let's put Big E on the borderline. Somebody says, one that annoys me is Taz. Ooh, Taz is good. Taz is a good pick. Taz is short, but if they utilize Taz in the same way that ECW utilized Taz, it wouldn't have been as believable because everybody in WWE was big as hell. Like, could you really see Taz throwing? Like, yes, we saw Taz wrestle Bam Bam Bigelow at 911 and a couple of the other guys to really kind of get over the fact that he was short. He was short, but he was technically skilled. Like, he had all the judo background. He had the submission stuff. So he could really, be believable and be small. But he couldn't do the entertainment stuff WWE wanted him to do. Taz was a guy who took himself very seriously. And he came into WWE with a neck injury. So I'll put Taz on the borderline too, because yes, they should have used Taz better. I don't think they got everything they could out of Taz. Taz never even won a championship in WWE, and the hardcore title does not count. So he never even won a title. He was never an Intercontinental champion or the European champion or anything like that. But yeah, when you compare him to a lot of the main event guys, like, he was tiny standing next to Triple H, who wasn't even that big, So, well, in comparison, like Steve Austin and guys like that, he wasn't that big. So I would put Taz on the borderline, but there's definitely a size issue there. Let's see. Gail Kim. Gail Kim got one of the best in TNA. They had her lose all her major matches and then turned her into a valet. Gail Kim is a former women's champion in WWE. I think she won the title 3 times. She wasn't a focal point by any means. She was just kind of like a person who held the belt. It was a different era, the era of the Divas division and the, pillow fights and shit like that. So there's a lot of women in that era where you could say they probably could have done more with them. So even though I don't like Gail Kim, I call her Fail Gail all the time. I'll put her on the list. I think Gail Kim definitely has, I don't know if she has tremendous amount of charisma though. I think that other places that prioritize work rate got the most out of Gail Kim and will get the most out of a Gail Kim. But that doesn't mean that WWE didn't, underutilize her. I'll put her on the borderline at best, because I didn't see anything. I've never seen anything from Gail Kim that says, oh yeah, WWE is really missing out by not having Gail Kim on the roster. I mean, she had great women's matches, but WWE had fine women's matches with, Melina and Beth Phoenix, and those were her contemporaries. So I don't know. I wouldn't do that. I'll put her in the mid. Owens, Kevin Owens. Well, his career is not over yet, so I don't know. We're gonna have to put more time behind that one. Wade Barrett. Now I see a lot of people who have said Wade Barrett. Not on this list. I already mentioned them before. But Wade Barrett is one of those guys who was a 5-time Intercontinental Champion. He's sort of like Jeff Jarrett, where even when he changed his body type and he got super ripped, they just never let him break through to the main event. And then they did Bad News Barrett. That got over like gangbusters, and they still didn't put him in the main event. So yeah, he goes on the list. Bad News Barrett was a gift. They pushed him harder when he was barely over as the leader of the Nexus than when he legitimately got over, got in fantastic shape, and had a creative character called Bad News Barrett. They pushed Bad News Barrett less than they pushed garbage-ass Nexus Wade Barrett. That's just incompetence. Bad News Barrett goes on the list. Owen Hart. Every time I watch his match with Brett, I feel a little sadder. Owen Hart should definitely be interested. And Owen Hart's on the borderline though, because Owen had tremendous charisma. Just not sure when he would have been a megastar world beater. Just not sure when that would have occurred. I think he was in the right spot for his career. The only option you would have had would have been to make him the champion in late 94. And instead of giving the belt to Bob Backlund, you could have gave the belt to Owen and then had Brett take the belt back from Owen at WrestleMania 11. Was that WrestleMania 11? Yeah, that was WrestleMania 11 when Bob Backlund wrestled Bret Hart. But then we went and got Shawn versus Diesel. I don't know. But I can't really pinpoint a time where I would think Owen Hart would have broken through and become a world champion. The Black Heart days was pretty good. But that was right in the middle of Steve Austin going up. So, but I would put Owen Hart in the borderline. So, somebody says, Cody Rhodes, get out of here. Cody, no. Somebody says Apollo Crews. Oh, Apollo Crews and Cody Rhodes. I'm not sure what more you could have asked for in terms of Cody. Yes, he probably should have been moved up to the main event level. And I think we can see today in AEW that Cody could have cut promos and stood toe-to-toe with main event guys, especially when he bulked up. But it took him a while to bulk up. Cody was still kind of skinny when he left WWE. He didn't really have the body type, but I think he had the work rate. 'Cause I did like Smoke and Mirrors Cody, the plastic mask Cody. I thought they showed a lot. Then he went over and got over a mustache. Cody was the kind of guy who got over every single thing WWE did with him. Rhodes Scholars got it over. Paper bags on the head got it over. Stardust, however, was probably the death knell, because that was kind of like the one thing that made him look super silly. That was the one thing that, even though he kind of got it over, it was super silly. But that match with Goldust, I think they had a match at Fastlane or something like that. When that match didn't get any crowd reaction, that was kind of the end. That was kind of it. That was the death knell for both of them. But Goldust had such a history that they were able to keep him around. But Cody, I'll put him on the borderline. I definitely think they should have done more with Cody, especially when he was during the Continental Champion. He lost it to Big Show. That was fucking stupid. Apollo Crews, I want to put him in the borderline too, because I think he has tremendous potential. He's been saddled with that damn accent, but the character was finally starting to work out. He was getting really good. He was Intercontinental Champion. Everything was working out fine. And then they took the belt from him, and then he went into the wasteland. And now he's currently in one of the worst eras in his career ever. He's back to not even being on TV anymore because of just bad creative. So Apollo Crews in the borderline. So is Cody Rhodes. Ember Moon. Ember Moon injury prone. She had the biggest match of her career and got no crowd reaction. She's cringe. No, I'm not going to let you go ahead. Ember Moon can't cut a promo. She can't talk to save her life. She comes across as somebody playing a character and not as that's who she naturally is. She's gifted as a performer, but that's about it. Vader or Walter. They haven't even done anything with Walter yet. He's really just starting to get on TV. I'm about to try to hurry up and get through here. Dr. Dusty Williams, he was 36 when he came in. He was already kind of washed. They put together that whole, the Brawl for All was a waste of money, but I don't think Dr. Dusty Williams would have got over anyway. It's a different era. I think Steve Austin probably would have wanted to work with Dr. Dusty Williams because he's Dr. Dusty Williams, but I think it was a different time. It wasn't the 80s anymore. You know, it'd have been like bringing in Barry Windham and saying, oh yeah, Steve Austin's going to wrestle Barry Windham in the main event of WrestleMania 16 or something like that. Like, oh, hell no. It's not 1988. Nobody wants to see that shit. Sean O'Hare. I know a lot of people like Sean O'Hare, but come on. No. I'm not going to entertain the Sean O'Hare one. I've already talked about Finn Balor. Somebody here wrote a list. Somebody put Mustafa Ali. I'm going to put LOL. I don't believe that. A lot of these people are starting to now regurgitate some of the same names. I do see Shayna Baszler. I think Shayna Baszler should definitely be on the list. With her background and the way she was used in NXT, Shayna Baszler should definitely be a world beater right now. You know, she's got size. She's got the personality as far as she doesn't need to have tremendous charisma because she would be a monster heel. And she's bigger than most of the girls and more physical than most of the girls. She can get over with it. The way they did not using Shayna Baszler, I don't know. She could be the female Kurt Angle, you know, well, maybe not so much with the comedy, but with as far as being a technical master. You know, her matches are not the most exciting because she doesn't utilize a whole lot of high spots, but I like the grounding, you know, meat grinder like style of Shayna Baszler, and they're not utilizing it correctly. So I'll put Shayna on the list. Since for me, it's AJ Styles. AJ Styles is former WWE champion. No, he's not on the list. He was champion for a long time too, and got, you know, main event at WrestleMania against The Undertaker. No way. So I'm just seeing a lot of the same people, and then they're starting to mock him, saying Jimmy Wang Yang and shit like that. Somebody said Sin Cara. I don't know about this. This is ridiculous. Somebody said Canyon. Fuck out of here. That's enough. We was at this for almost an hour. All right. So what do you guys think, you know, of some of the names mentioned? Or what names do you think were not mentioned that should have been talked about? Somebody said Lance Cade. I actually think Lance Cade is a pretty good one. I think Lance Cade has some potential. He had size. He had some charisma. I just don't think that... I think they had something going with the Heartbreak Cade thing. And I think they were actually going to put him with Chris Jericho, weren't they? He was going to be Chris Jericho's bodyguard or companion or something. And they were going to use the Lance Cade trained by Shawn Michaels thing. And it didn't really work out. But Lance Cade has, you know, had potential. You know, I'm surprised nobody said Test. I see somebody saying Braun Strowman. Somebody said Carlito, Tony Storm. There's a couple of more people being named here, but I don't want to keep y'all too much longer. So let me know what y'all think in the comment section below. Jack Swagger, get the fuck out of here. Get out of here, please. All right. Again, let me know what you guys thought. Like, share, and subscribe. I'll talk to you guys later, man. Peace.